welcome to the Stafford Connect podcast. I'm Tom Cohen. This episode is being called the 4th of July celebration, even though I know it's June. But if I wait to tell you about the great programs happening around Stafford on the 4th, then it'll be too late. So I put this show together in June so you have a chance to hear about all the great events and make plans to attend. We have some great guests lined up for this episode to fill you in on what's happening around the county on the 4th. First, we'll talk to Price Jett from the Patawomeck Tribal Center in South Stafford. Then we'll sit down with Ann Waters of the George Washington Foundation to see what they have planned for the 4th of July. And finally, some information on the county's events at Pratt Park. So there's a lot of ground to cover. But first, before we get started, I thought I'd reflect on why this holiday is so important to me. My ancestors responded to Paul Revere's ride and fought at Concord and throughout the Revolution. They served under George Washington. So for me, Independence Day holds significant meaning. And of course, we all know that the 4th of July is a celebration of the passage of the Declaration of Independence by the Continental Congress on July 4th in 1776. And that's where the other name for the 4th of July came from, Independence Day. The Declaration itself was written by a committee that included Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Roger Sherman, and Robert Livingston. It's interesting to note that the Continental Congress actually declared independence on July 2nd, but they didn't sign it until the 4th, which is why Independence Day isn't celebrated on the 2nd. The first Independence Day celebrations were modeled after the King's birthday, which included things like bonfires, bell ringing, formal processions, and lots of speeches. Back then, it was common for the speeches on the King's birthday not only to praise, but to criticize the King. And so the original 4th of July celebrations included opportunities for citizens to bring up issues facing the nation. That would be viewed as partisanship today. But those kind of partisan celebrations died out in the late 19th and early 20th centuries and were replaced by the 4th of July celebrations we know today. A midsummer holiday with parades, concerts, firework displays, and a variety of fun leisure activities for the whole family to enjoy the day, which is what we like to focus our discussion on this episode. And to help us do that, I'd like to introduce our first guest, Price Jett from the Patawomeck Tribal Center. Good evening, Price, and welcome to Stafford Connect.
Thanks, Tom. Pleasure to be here.
Well, it's great having you. So I thought we'd start off by talking to you and about what you do and about what the tribe does. So as a representative of the Patawomeck Tribe of Virginia, how would your community need to know about what you do?
So it's a Patawomeck Tribe is a Virginia state recognized tribe. I'm the treasurer. A little bit about my background. I've been in Stafford, grew up here, went to the local schools here, ended up living all over the world, and came back to Stafford County. I love it here. But yes, I work with the tribe now, and I am the treasurer.
And then the tribe has a long history in Stafford, in our whole area.
In fact, we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go forward today. Of course, the tribe goes way back, and it goes back to, in written records, back to the 1600s and even before. But there's a particularly interesting component there about someone who was Chief Wahanganochi, which we're going to get to later. And that was in the mid-1600s.
Okay. I mean, and it's really interesting. The more I've learned, it's sort of a really amazing way of seeing American history and the cultural history and the colonial history and everything. Yep. Because the tribe has been integral in Stafford and in a country for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Well, of course, and when John Smith came, of course, there was documentation of the tribe. It was one of a collection of tribes that were part of the Powhatan Confederation. It was probably the second largest tribe. Powhatan's was the largest. The Patawomeck tribe was documented in the early 1600s with John Smith as having about 800 bowmen. So, of course, then there were others in addition to the bowmen. So it was a very large tribe in the early 1600s here in Virginia along the coastal waterways.
All right.
They spoke the Algonquin language.
Oh, wow. All right. So first, let's talk about the Tribal Center. Let's get everybody up to speed with the Tribal Center. How did the Tribal Center get started?
Well, the tribal center was the tribe's really first home in modern times. So the tribe had a lot of artifacts, a lot of pottery, clay pieces, arrowheads, things going back hundreds of years that had actually been in containers under people's beds and places. And the tribe would go to school events and teach children about Native American history, bring those all out and then put them all, but never having a permanent place. So around 2019, at what is now the McDuff Park area, the home that was the McDuff home, McDuff Green, was an empty property, was given to Stafford County by the Green family for the purposes of education and other things. And that was something that we worked with Stafford County at the time, thanks to yourself, Meg Bomke, so many different people. And we moved into that place to have an air-conditioned and climate-controlled space to store all of these artifacts. And that's where they are now. That started in 2019. The place was covered in vines at the time, and a lot of work went into it. And it's actually a beautiful museum now and a beautiful property where there's a living village adjacent to the actual house itself, which serves as a museum.
And it's really neat in watching how it sort of has blossomed. Because of all, I remember seeing all the weeds and all the vines
Sure.
and everything. And in fact, you discovered an entire building that you didn't know about.
We discovered many things. I mean, it was really just a jungle-like atmosphere. We discovered the pump house and all sorts of things, but it was just a wonderful experience to bring it back to life. And now to see children come through there by the hundreds, which happened this past fall, to me, that's really what excites me about that particular museum and property and the teaching opportunity that's there.
Nice. Were there any other obstacles besides vines and
Well,
bees
of course, there were all the
snakes and
Not really. Those were the biggest ones, were the physical obstacles. The community was generous, and they put in so many volunteer hours removing all of those vines. So many people came in and refinished the floors for free and laid down tile and all sorts of different things. The whole community came together. Countless hours went into restoring the property.
so and you sort of talked about how you got the property, but how did you get that property? Because there was different opportunities or different properties to look at, and there's for anybody who doesn't know, you all have a site up in a quiet district. So what's sort of the process to select this of all?
Well, the thing that was different about this site was the actual building. We actually needed a home for the artifacts, and that was what was different. The other places that were available were just empty land, and it was just not possible for what we really needed, a place of education and a place to have a museum.
And some of the other ones had really good mud, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we did visit several of them and
We got stuck in the mud.
sink in the mud, that's for sure.
So what are the important accomplishments that the center has done?
Well, there are so many things that the tribe does in the community. Amongst them are we grow what we call a benevolence garden. So the garden is grown. We grow vegetables for people that have food insecurity issues. We give that away. We also sponsor the a food pantry that actually comes onto the property every week and helps people that have food issues. We give away scholarships. Last year, we gave away 13 scholarships. We do a lot of, in the winter and during Thanksgiving and Christmas, we raise money for food baskets for needy families. We have a whole benevolence committee. We've helped people that they lost a loved one and really were struggling to pay for a funeral. We've done those sorts of things. We have a language class, which we've been doing for more than 15 years now. It's also online, so we have people, it's open to the public. We have people really from all across the country that dial in. On Sundays, we have adults, older teens, and children. We also have youth events there, and youth come in and volunteers work with them on different skills and things, sort of like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, youth group type thing that takes place on the property. So those are the things that make me most proud of the people there and the work that goes on, and really using the property to benefit the community.
And it's really interesting. You have the building itself, which, is,
Mm-hmm.
as you said, is more of a museum
Mm-hmm.
where it has artifacts and things that people can see.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll get touch base with some of that in a bit. But you also have the village,
Mm-hmm.
which is really awesome. For many years, people had to go to Jamestown to get
Sure.
any type of exposure like that. But now
Sure.
we have it here.
It's right here. I'm very proud of the work that was done there. There are two types of longhouses that are there that people can come and observe. They are created by hand. The frames of those are from saplings that we dry out and bend and shape. Some are covered in hand-woven mats, and some are covered in bark of trees, poplar trees. And so both types are there. You don't see that at Jamestown. And so our goal, what I would love to see is that children from all across Virginia, Maryland, Delaware come here to Stafford County and see this piece of history differently than you can experience it at Jamestown. Jamestown is a wonderful place. I took all of my children there when they were in school and rode on the bus and took our little bag lunches and the like. Went down there. It was wonderful, but it was a lot of a colonial focus. There is a Native American component, but it's more or less tucked off to the side. Here you can come, you can see those longhouses complete with furs and other sorts of things to represent the time. There's cooking that actually takes place there. There's flint napping. There's cord making that takes place there, and showing people skills that were used in the 1600s. So what would be success for me is just have the children coming by the hundreds, having them running all over the place and wreaking havoc, which they do, and that's part of it. But not having to go hours away. Do it here in Stafford County, and people coming from all over. And we just opened last July 4th, so last fall was the first time we opened it up to schools. And we literally had hundreds of children from Stafford County, King George County, coming through, bus after bus after bus. That was the highlight, and just seeing them experience something different right here in Stafford County.
Right. So, and just real quickly, what's special about it being a longhouse for anybody who hasn't been out there yet?
So Longhouse was a place for sleeping, congregating, even cooking. Was a fire pit inside the Longhouse. This one, true to form, has its own smoke and ventilation component in the ceiling, and you can come and see what it looked like. Right now, the closest people get to that might be some old drawings and paintings and those types of things. But now you can actually experience it. We have two different sizes, a very large one with dozens and dozens of children and their teachers and families can come in and experience. We have a medium-sized one where you get a little closer. And then we have actually a small one where the little children can actually touch the walls and touch the different artifacts that are in there. So that's there. That's different, I think, than anywhere else.
And it's interesting because I know you all have looked at this. Museums have changed over the last 20 years, where it's far more tactile, people touching and doing, rather than just walking around and looking at something. So you've taken the more modern, quote unquote, modern way of looking at exhibits and put it into something that is part of the oldest part of our heritage.
We call this the living village. We want children to touch things. We want them to experience it. And as I said, there are people there actually doing flint napping and making different tools, and we want the children to touch those things and experience history that way.
Cool.
Yeah.
And any particular plans for the future?
Well, so many different plans for the future. We want to continue to grow this fall with more and more schools. We're constantly updating things inside the Living Village. We're also constantly refreshing what's inside the museum itself. The museum has 3 relatively large spaces. They're each arranged clockwise inside the museum that take you from the original narratives about the creation of the earth and the creation of man from the Native American point of view in the 1600s, and what was called the Great Hare. So you can come and sort of see that story. And then you work your way clockwise through. And we take people through different archaeological digs that have taken place here in Stafford County. A lot of people don't know the Smithsonian came to Stafford County in the 1930s, did a huge archaeological dig of the Patawomeck people. We walk people through those different sites, the artifacts from those sites, and then as you go into another room, it takes you into the 1800s, and by the time you get to the end, you're in modern times, 2024, and we have a display there that's a rotating display where today's creations, paintings, artifacts, those things done by people in the year 2021 are right there, and we're rotating those through. So it's a way to really pass through about 10,000 years in those 3 rooms, those 3 spaces.
Wow.
That's inside. So we want to keep it alive and fresh.
Right. And that also, it dovetails into, I know Dr. Taylor, when we came out to one of the events, and you all were saying, well, it'd be great if we had X number. And he leaned over to me and said, 10 times that or 100 times that number of students who will come from Stafford. I mean, he was committed to doing exactly what you said.
Yeah.
And by making it slightly different and growing every year, that means that every year it's a little bit fresher, so that it's not the same thing that somebody, if they go with their parents or whatever one year, it's the exact same thing the very next year.
Yeah. And because the village itself is very dynamic, on a different day, you get a different experience.
Yep.
Because there are different people there doing different things. So, we want to keep it fresh, and we want to see it grow. And, from my perspective, just overrun by young people learning new things. That's
awesome.
Success.
It's great. So let's talk about the 4th of July, because, as you said, you opened last 4th of July, and it was a really great, massive crowd. I mean, really excited by the crowd that was there.
There were cars all the way to Route 3. We stopped counting at 1600. We just didn't know what to do at that point. We weren't expecting that. We had a whole team of volunteers. People had rehearsed what they were going to do, but it all went out the window, and people ended up just having a wonderful time. This year, we also are going to have the museum completely free. It's going to be open. We want people to come through and experience it. Of course, if they want to contribute, they can, but the museum is going to be completely open and free for people on July 4th. There will be trolleys that are going to take people from Ferry Farm to the Patawomeck Tribal Center to the city of Fredericksburg and around. So you can park your car at one of those places, or also on Cool Spring Road. And those trolleys and buses will be taking people through constantly to make it easy for folks. But the place will be filled with people doing craft work. There will be open cooking fires going on. The museum will be open, and we just want people to experience it and to enjoy it.
And what's really interesting is that from one side you see the road and the field, but on the other side of the house it goes down to the river. And the river played such an integral part to the tribe and its history.
It did. It was critical on several fronts. It was critical for commerce. Of course, when Chief Powhatan was the Uber chief over the Confederation of Tribes, Patawomeck being one of those, the river was used to collect taxes from other tribes. It was used for food. It was used for transportation. It was critical. And so at this particular property, when people come on July 4th or any other time, as you work your way through the museum and you come out the back, I really believe it's one of the most beautiful views in Stafford County. You look down over the river, and we want people to come. This year, there will be food trucks and other things there, so people can really bring their whole family and spend the day there. You can go down to the river, just see a really beautiful spot. And then if you make a right you'll go to the living village itself. So, yeah, the river was critical. We just feel so blessed that we can do that. Troop 199, the Boy Scouts, are going to be building a net making rack at the top of that hill that overlooks the river right out behind the museum, so people can come and see how a net was made by hand, see what the rack looks like, read about what you were just talking about, the river and life on the river and its importance to culture, its importance to connectedness, its importance to community. Read that. So Troop 199 of the Boy Scouts are going to be working on that as part of an Eagle Scout project. So we're excited about that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And most people don't realize that the Rappahannock used to be far deeper than it is now. Even though it's a tidal river, it used to be large enough for even larger ships to go up and down it. So it's just, it's nice to think about it and really realize how much that was the thoroughfares of our time for many, many centuries. As opposed to sitting in traffic on any of those major roads.
That's for sure.
All right. So, is there, with the large crowd, you said they're going to have the transportation, you're going to have the food trucks, you're going to have people being able to see how things are made.
We're going to have activities for children. Children can make necklaces. That'll be there. Stafford County, we love Stafford County. Lisa Logan and those folks, they're providing thousands of sunglasses, free sunglasses for folks that'll be out and along the river, and also come and get those. As I said, there'll be food trucks, there'll be craft opportunities for children, there'll be face painting, there'll be the living village with the open fire pits with food being cooked. We want it to be a family experience and an educational experience and just a time to really enjoy July 4th. So with a lot of free things going on there, free transportation, you don't want to miss it.
And what hours?
I wish I knew the answer to that, Tom. I really don't. I think it starts at 10 and goes to 4 or 4:30, somewhere around in that time period. I should know, but I don't. Because everything wants to shut. We want to shut everything down to get ready for the fireworks show afterwards.
And that's why. And so for this episode, we're having because to me, in my mind, it sort of fits. You have, and this is why I worked hard to get this to happen, because you have the concentration on our tribal history, and then they can go up to Ferry Farm and see the colonial history, which, as you said, in other places it's sort of more of one and not on the other, whereas having this experience allows you to really appreciate both and give both equal time, so you understand a lot more, because there's a rich history with the tribe and the settlers and everything. I mean, it's just amazing.
Even on the property itself, you actually see an evolution of Stafford County, because as you go through those rooms, the one that starts with the creation story of the great hare and then takes you into the 1600s, then the trading with the Dutch, and then up to modern times, you actually see Stafford County evolving and changing and growing and morphing. It is just like a quilt, and you're going to of history, and you're going to see that even right on that one property.
Right.
And then of course you can catch the trolley from there, go down and see George Washington's Ferry Farm, go back into the city for the activities there, catch another trolley, come back, get another necklace for the children, and just do that all day long if you want, or just come and stay all day.
Right. So is there anything special or anything else you want to sort of advocate for as far as the 4th of July or other times of the year where it's good to come and see it?
Well, we do things all year round. We do things at Christmas time as well for children, all sorts of different things going on there. But the thing I really want people to know about, it's something that's my favorite part of the whole property and of the whole museum, and it's called the Wahanganochie Medal. So Chief Wahanganochie in the 1600s, he was very pro-English. And of course, that infuriated Powhatan, because Powhatan was not. But Wahanganochie was very pro-English. And there was a situation where a man committed murder, and Wahanganochie captured the murderer. Now, he had a medal that says, to the king of the Patawamecks. given in the 1600s. And that medal he wore proudly around his neck so that he could pass through English territory unharmed. Well, he captures this murderer, takes him to a wealthy Englishman named Giles Brent up in the little more northern part of Stafford County, and turns over the murderer. Giles Brent, however, wanted the Patawomeck's land because it was fertile land along the river. And so he then released the murderer, bound Wahonganochie, charged Wahonganochie with treason against the King of England, and said that he was the murderer, sent him all the way to Jamestown to be tried. A 3-day walk, but of course they went on horseback. They go, and there is Wahonganochie in front of the House of Burgesses, and he is to be tried for treason against the King of England. This was not going to end well for a non-Englishman. Well, they hear him out, and he spoke English. Because he was very pro-English, and he traded with the English. He told his story just simply and plainly. And they said, this is an innocent man. And they charged Giles Brent with a penalty of 10,000 pounds of tobacco for false arrest and false accusation of treason and murder, and turned Wahonganochie loose. Now Wahonganochie had to walk 3 days from there back to Stafford County. He gets as far as Camden in Caroline County, Camden Farm, Camden Plantation. There, as best we can tell, he was jumped and killed. And in that process, this medal falls from him in the field in the 1600s. And there it lies, plowed over and over and over again until 1835. An individual found it in 1835 and took it to the Cultural Museum in Richmond, and there it was labeled 1835-1. And it's been in the Museum of Richmond for all of this time. Once we opened the museum, we spoke with them, and we now have the Wahonganochie medal, one of a kind on the planet, here in Stafford County. It took 400 years to get back from then to now to Stafford County, and it's in a display case right in the middle of the very first room. It is the focus object there, and it's under 24-hour surveillance there. But this is a chance for people to see something they will never see in their lives again. We do have to return it to the museum in Richmond, but it is the Wahonganochie medal. And we have some exact duplicates made that people can take a look at and see what it actually looked like. But it's there in the display case, and if you go to the back and look through the glass, you'll see the notes on there of 1835-1. It's the original Wahonganochie medal from Stafford to Jamestown, lost in a field, lay there sleeping, buried, plowed over for almost 200 years, found, then in Richmond, and now back in Stafford County. You don't want to miss this. Bring your children to this. It's worth the trip just for that. And there's only one on the planet, and it's here in Stafford County.
And it's really awesome to look at.
It's amazing.
It really is amazing.
It's amazing. You'll see to the King of the Patawamecks, granted by King of England.
Okay, and normally when I end the program or a section of the program, I ask people for a nice story about Stafford. But I think
that was my story.
That was your nice story about Stafford.
I love that story.
It's really amazing. I mean, there's so much that I've learned about the tribe and its interaction and what it's done over the centuries. And I share it to students because a lot of what students will sit there and say, "Well, nothing ever happens in Stafford." I'm like, "No, you need to know the history and know what we've done."
Rich in history, and this is a piece of it that just many people don't know about. Yep. And this is the chance to come and learn. Bring your children, bring your family.
Great. And there's a lot of things at the museum and at the Tribal Center that are just phenomenal to see. So I would urge you to come out on the 4th of July. And if you can't, because you're traveling or something, then definitely come out to the tribe to Tribal Center on Route 3 at almost any time of the year. You all do great stuff.
We have a website, and it lists the hours. We have someone there Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 1 to 5, and then every other Saturday we're open. So just go to the website. You'll see the times that the museum's open.
And what would that website be?
It is Patawomeck Indian Tribe of Virginia.org.
Okay.
But if you just go, it's so heavily trafficked. If you just go to Google and just type Patawomeck, the first thing you're going to see is this item in Stafford County. You don't need to remember anything more than Patawomeck. Type it in, even if you misspell it, and it'll come right to the top.
Even if you mispronounce it.
Even if you mispronounce it.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Price. You've been
my
awesome.
pleasure.
And it's one of the gems of Stafford County. It's something that's to be really proud of, because the tribe, as you said, has done such phenomenal work in updating, fixing, correcting the house because it was in really bad shape when we found it. We saw it. And the tribe has just been amazing in the work that they've done, and all the volunteer hours of members and other people just saying they just support you all. I mean,
and the tribe works very hard to give back to the community through the scholarships. We also support, the local sports teams, and we have wonderful sports teams here in Stafford County.
And you do medical thing in the winter where they give shots.
We do a free clinic. We have several dentists, physicians, and some folks that focus on the elderly. We give them free dental checkups and blood pressure and all of those sorts of things. We do free flu shots. And then in the next day or two, we have a whole rabies clinic where people are just showing up. We have already 106 people showing up with dogs and cats and other things to get rabies shots. So
awesome.
we enjoy being involved in the community and giving back. Stafford's such a wonderful place.
Well, you're wonderful. The tribe's wonderful. And so we end this section. We hope you come out on the 4th of July to see the Tribal Center and come out and see them throughout the year. And I thank you very much for being here.
Thanks, Tom. Pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Bryce.
All right.
So our next guest on Stafford Connect is Ann Waters. Ann is the Director of Education for the George Washington Foundation, which owns and operates George Washington's boyhood home at Ferry Farm, as well as the historic Kenmore, the home of George Washington's sister, Betty Washington Lewis. Well, hi, Ann. Thanks for coming on to Stafford Connect. It's great to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
So I thought I'd get started giving you a chance to talk about yourself and, to some degree, the George Washington Foundation. So as the Director of Education, is there anything in particular you'd like to tell us about you?
Sure. Well, I started at the foundation back in 2021. And was in a previous position doing visitor services and interpretation. And I studied history in school. So I'm really excited to be able to use that history degree and sort of pursue a career in museum education. And I'm originally from Richmond, so not too far away. So it's been nice to sort of be up in Fredericksburg.
Awesome. And then can you give us a little background on the foundation and just sort of how it got here and how it became about? It's really an amazing story.
Sure, yes. So the George Washington Foundation, for those that may not know, we manage, own, and operate historic Kenmore, and then also George Washington's Ferry Farm. So Kenmore is George Washington's sister's house. So Betty Washington Lewis, then her husband Fielding Lewis. So that's a Revolutionary War era home. And then George Washington's Ferry Farm, of course, is George Washington's boyhood home. So he lived there from the ages about 6 to 22. And we talk a lot about his childhood there. So we operate both of those properties. And as the education director, I sort of manage educational programming between both sites, which is definitely a fun endeavor.
So what are some of the most significant accomplishments of the foundation?
Sure. So the sort of history of the foundation goes back to 1922. So that's when a group of local Fredericksburg ladies banded together to save historic Kenmore. So they raised money, purchased the property, and then founded the Kenmore Association. So that was sort of the start of our foundation. And then that site opened to the public in 1925 as a museum. And then if you fast forward to 1996, that organization was able to save and purchase the property that's Ferry Farm. That site was also up for commercial development. And it was at that time when the association purchased Ferry Farm that we renamed the organization and became the George Washington Foundation. So really a very interesting history of sort of how both of those sites were saved by the local community, which I think is a really cool part of our story. And then, of course, at Ferry Farm specifically, we found the foundation of the Washington House back in 2008 was when archaeologists uncovered the foundation. So that was, of course, one of our grand accomplishments, I would say, is actually locating the Washington House and then the process of reconstructing the Washington House.
Right, and it's quite remarkable when you see it. So can you take us through the development of the house and going through the house?
Sure. It was back in 2008 that archaeologists sort of announced that they had uncovered the house. Ferry Farm, it's been an active archaeological dig, and the main goal was to sort of uncover the Washington House and then reconstruct the property as it would have looked when the Washingtons were living there. So they found that foundation, and then it was about a decades-long process of really reconstructing the house, and that was using a mix of historical documents, historical records, and then, of course, the archaeological findings and artifacts that we were uncovering from the dig. So the house itself only opened to the public and was completed in 2018, which really wasn't that long ago when you're thinking about it. So it hasn't been open for that long. But the whole rebuilding construction process was a combination of modern construction, obviously, but also a lot of 18th century construction methods. So the cool thing is you get to learn a lot about 18th century construction when you're walking through the house, but also you can touch everything because it is a replica. So that's sort of how we're unique from other historic sites.
Right, and it's been beautiful watching it sort of progress and transform and go from just the archaeological dig to an actual structure.
Right, and we get visitors all the time who come in and say, they haven't been to Ferry Farm since the house has been there. So they remember the Ferry Farm site being essentially a field or the active dig site. And I tell people all the time that, we are an active dig site. So when they come during the summers, even though the house, Washington House, has been reconstructed, we are actively digging, learning new things, and building new buildings on site as we find them. So there's always new things, learning going on.
Right, and that's really neat how it's still a work in progress, sort of like the county is, and sort of our history is always a work in progress.
Right. I joke all the time. It's like every day I learn something new. Every summer our archaeologists are out there. They're learning new things, literally pulling new things from the dirt. So it's a really cool, just ongoing process. We're never really finished. There's always sort of a next step to interpreting that history.
And one of the interesting things from when I was out there is that how much, and we talked about this with the tribe, the river was the main source of transportation. I mean, you're on Route 3, which is a main road, but that's the house, really the front of the house is on the river.
Right. And that would have been very important. And I, talked to my tour groups about this, but that location on the river was so important to George Washington and sort of how the experiences he has growing up, the fact that he grows up really right across from the town of Fredericksburg. He has access to things and ideas and travel on the river, which is different from where he was born out in more of a rural area. So you have different opportunities and you're exposed to new things when you're on this river city, essentially.
Right. And I was saying earlier that the river was so deep that you could actually take large ships up.
Yes, and people do not realize that. When I always tell people when we're in those rooms that face the river at Ferry Farm, like if you look out and see the river, you can try to picture these ships coming up the river and coming to Fredericksburg. It was an important port town, and it's hard to envision today large ships coming up the river with it, silting up, changing over time. But back then, you would have been able to have these large ships come up the river.
Right. It's really just an amazing thing to think about how it's changed. over the centuries. So, are any particular plans going forward for either the house or the foundation?
Yeah, I'd say from the education programming perspective, we're always developing, new programs, new activities, and things to get people to come out to our site and maybe to see the site from a new perspective. So we always, every year, have kind of a busy event calendar ahead of us. And as far as like archaeology and things like that go on the site, we are actively working to rebuild some of those outbuildings at Ferry Farm. So if you were to come visit today, we do have 2 new outbuildings on site, and we're in the process of continuing to locate others. With the goal eventually to really rebuild the Ferry Farm landscape, what it would have looked like when George was living there during his childhood.
Awesome. We've seen that Dr. Taylor, the superintendent of schools, has really placed an emphasis on having the students learn about the history of our area, and with like for the tribal center, they used to go down to Jamestown, but now they can come to Stafford to learn about it. And so there's that same connection with Stafford County Schools with your foundation?
Oh, absolutely. We see so many school groups and field trips on site. I'm laughing because we're still kind of in the midst of our very busy school group season. We essentially through the spring months and fall months especially, it seems like we have a school group on site just about every day. And it's been really cool to see. Again, I started back in 2021. And at that point, we were still kind of coming out of the COVID years, I think, for a lot of schools. So I remember that fall and spring, we still had some groups that weren't able to go on field trips. Versus now, I think we really have schools coming back in full force. And it's really fun. And a lot of them are primarily our local counties coming and sort of taking advantage of the resources they have outside of the classroom to get that educational experience. And I'll talk to kids when they come in and, some of our second graders, those early ages that have never been on a field trip because they didn't have the chance during COVID. So it's really cool to see them experience this very memorable experience. I think we all remember our field trips growing up.
Yes.
Yeah. So they really have it's cool to see that impact.
Right. And to see the excitement.
Oh, yeah. So excited to be out of the classroom, sort of learning something in a new environment. We really focus on like hands-on learning, interactive activities, things like that. So it's just a different experience than what you sometimes are able to get in a classroom setting.
Or in the old days when I was that age, the museums and whatnot, where you just walked and no touched. And
right.
We were talking about this with the tribe, that it's very much tactile learning.
Right. For sure. And that's what I think is really special about Ferry Farm and the Washington House specifically, because we don't have those issues that traditional house museums have where you can't have kids touch things. You don't want kids to sit on the chairs at Ferry Farm because everything is a replica or a reproduction item. Kids can come in, they can sit on the bed, they can sit on the furniture, they can pick things up. And it really does make it, I think, just more of an immersive learning experience and something that they really remember because they're able to interact with the space in a different way versus just being told, don't touch.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, this stanchion and rope there that keeps you away from being anywhere.
Right.
So let's shift to talk about the 4th of July.
Sure.
I know that's a big event.
Oh, sure.
And it's really been, for the 20-some years I've lived in the county, it's something I go to every year. It's phenomenal. So can you give us the sort of the sense of the importance of the 4th of July and why you all do a great big presentation and event?
Oh, sure. Well, yeah, as you mentioned, I was trying to do a little bit of digging on this. I think we've been doing this event since like early mid-2000s. So been going on for a while. It's one of our largest community events, for sure. And definitely we see people, like you said, who've been here living in town for years that come back with their family year after year. And I think one of the great things about it is sort of the importance of our site to American history. So it's really cool that we can celebrate and put on this event that's celebrating American independence and the Revolution and all of these historical moments at a site that has such historical value. especially, the George Washington connection, that we are celebrating America's founding, if you will, at the site of George Washington's childhood home. So I think it's just a really sort of nice and meaningful connection that we can have that historical celebration at a historical location.
And it was neat. A couple of years ago, you had because I want to be say George, but George Washington had written the book about civility, and so you had different things about civility up, which was very interesting because as a country we had been losing civility. So it was really timely to go back and look at what ended up being the first president's view that civility was important.
Yes. There's documents where George, as you were saying, essentially copied all of these rules of civility as part of, practicing penmanship or part of his schooling. And some of them are very funny in terms of they don't translate super well to modern society. And some of them really do kind of ring true, those rules that he copied down. So yeah, we've done like activities with those, especially with school programs. So that's always a fun aspect of George Washington's story that we get to tell, especially his kind of early schooling, things like that.
So is there anything in particular this year that we're looking at?
For the 4th of July?
Yes.
Yeah, so we are doing quite a lot. It is a big, exciting event for us. As always, we'll have different colonial games. We'll do kind of patriotic, historical crafts. We have a few different reenactment groups that come out and interpret like Revolutionary War soldiers, things like that. We do a very popular, one of our longtime volunteers comes out as a Revolutionary War soldier and does a kids militia drill. So again, all very interactive activities. The Washington House, of course, is open for tours. So if you're someone who has not been to Ferry Farm since the house has been open, it's a great time to come out for the 4th, and you get a little bit of everything, and you do get to see inside the house. And we do also have our archaeologist out talking to the public. They normally do a couple different activities. They bring out artifacts. We have a very popular fossils activity that one of our archaeologists brings out, fossils at Ferry Farm. And they're, of course, digging. So our dig season goes through a significant portion of the summer. So it's a really cool opportunity to talk to the archaeologists, see the house. There's a lot of family-friendly kids activities as well. So it's a big, exciting event going on.
And I mean, it's sort of, a lot of us have the cultural thing about archaeology just being Indiana Jones or
Yes.
The Tomb Raider. But there's actually a lot with archaeology that is really prescient and noticeable for today.
Oh, yes, absolutely. We like to myth bust that the paleontology dinosaurs versus archaeologists myth, but we owe so much of what we know about Ferry Farm and what we've been able to assess about George Washington's time there and his family, all these things that we've learned to archaeology. So archaeology can really tell us so much about the site and the site's history and about people. So it's a really cool experience, I think, for people to actually come out and talk to archaeologists and see the actual dig happening, to really illustrate it to people what that job is and what we get from it and what it teaches us.
Awesome. And I know that the flag ceremony is always a big event.
Yes. We do host a flag retirement ceremony at 1 p.m., sort of midday. And that's a really cool part of the day. We have a band come out, Enduring Freedom, and they play as part of that ceremony. We have a couple Spotsylvania color guard that comes out and helps with that, as well as a local Boy Scout troop, and then American Heritage Girls troop has come in the past. So it's really nice to have these local community members involved in that. And they take place in that retirement ceremony. We typically have our George Washington reenactor on site as well. And it's really neat to see him there sort of participating in that ceremony as well. And folks really, I think, enjoy that part of the event.
They do. And it's really neat because you just see the reverence of when they're taking down the flag and all. I mean, everybody just stops talking and stops, doing whatever and just plays really great reverence to, the whole atmosphere.
Right, exactly. I feel like as soon as you hear Enduring Freedom start playing, people kind of stand to attention and they make their way over to that marquee tent. People do I think really value that part of the program for sure.
It's really awesome. So besides that, are there anything in particular that you hope that visitors will take away from this event?
Yeah, I think for the event, I always hope that people come in, are able to experience something new. Either you learn something new, or you walk away with a new appreciation for history, and for the stories we're able to tell at Ferry Farm. And that's, I think, sort of my general hope for really all of what we do at both Ferry Farm and Kenmore, is that visitors come out to our sites, they're able to have really like a meaningful learning experience or connect to history in a new way. I think a lot of people might say that they didn't love history growing up in school. And I think these types of events and tours and all these community endeavors that we do at these sites really help people connect to history in a new way that's fun and engaging and different. So I always hope that that is something that they go away with, learning something new.
And as we look forward, I know you mentioned that there's different events during the year. There's the gingerbread competition. There's the event around President's Day.
Yes.
And things. So anything you like to give people a heads up in case they make the horrible mistake of going somewhere else on the 4th of July weekend and not staying in good old Stafford?
Right. Well, as you mentioned, one of our other big events is definitely President's Day. We celebrate George Washington's birthday. So that's another big event. Coming up in June, we do have 2 summer camps. June and July, we host some summer camps. So if you're looking for a educational, historical opportunity for your kiddos, would definitely suggest that. And one of those is archaeology themed. So if you want to set your children loose to dig around in the dirt, that's definitely a really popular one as well. So some of those summer programs that are coming up, I think, are a great opportunity for families looking for something to do.
Right. And then, do you want to say what the website is so that they know where to?
Yes, kenmore.org. So if you go to our website, we do have an events page, and we have a whole breakdown of all the events we do, details for ones that are coming up, and you can also look ahead on our event calendar. We post it at the beginning of the year, so you can see the full run of our events from January to December.
Awesome. And what hours on the 4th of July?
Yes, our hours on the 4th of July, can't forget the most important info, 10 to 4, and it is $1 per person, ages 3 and up, tickets at the gate. And it's a really great event if you are looking to do something new and exciting, bring out your family on the 4th.
Right. And we have the trolley that, you could park at Cool Springs or go to Ferry Farm, then go down to the Tribal Center or vice versa, and really enjoy the sort of the progression of history.
Correct. Yeah, we'll have the trolley system in place, so you can park at the Tribal Center. You can park at the Eagles Lodge on Cool Spring Road. We do have handicap parking only at Ferry Farm, but it's very easy if you're parking at any of those other locations to pick up the shuttle system and really hit all of the 4th of July events that are in town.
Well, awesome. And finally, I like to have our guests tell a nice story about Stafford, sort of as to relay good information and good things about our community.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I can say definitely being able to work in Stafford and to have this job has been so nice. I think one of the best parts of my job and sort of working in museum education, working in a public-facing role, is that I do get to interact with community members. So whether that's working with the local Stafford school groups or working with volunteer organizations that come out and help us with our events, I think working in a role like this, where you're in such an educational role, really allows you to do that community engagement. And that's certainly what I love best about my job, is being able to engage with the Stafford community through a wide variety of different things. Every day it's something new. So that certainly makes me appreciate the community I live in even more, that I get to interact with it to that level.
Awesome. Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you, Ann, for being here. And
thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. And we hope we get to see everybody at Ferry Farm on the 4th of July. And if for some reason you can't, check the website and see what other events they're doing. It's all throughout the year. It's really excellent. It's enjoyable.
Yes, please come on out.
Good. Thank you very much.
Yes, so thanks for having me.
So before we close out this edition of Stafford Connect, I'd like to remind everyone of the annual 4th of July Spectacular, sponsored by Stafford County Parks and Recreation. The 4th of July Spectacular is an annual event in the county that everybody looks forward to. This year, the event will again take place at the John Lee Pratt Memorial Park. For those of you not familiar with the park, you can Google its location at 120 River Road. This year's event will kick off at 6 p.m. There will be festive goodie bag giveaways for the first 2,000 visitors through the gate, so make sure you get there early. Of course, there will be tons of performances and activities throughout the evening. The Fredericksburg Concert Band will perform from 6:30 until 8. There will also be all kinds of wandering circus acts, like stilt walkers, jugglers, balloon twisting, and hula hooping all evening. You can also gather your family to play yard games and enjoy 10 featured food trucks serving everything from lemonade to tacos. And the evening will finish with this traditional spectacular fireworks display starting at 9:30. Remember, there's limited parking at the park, and it's free. You can bring your pets as long as they're on a leash and they behave themselves. It looks to be yet another fantastic event for you and your whole family. So mark it on your calendar, Stafford's 4th of July Spectacular, 6 p.m. at Pratt Park. You can get more information about the event by visiting the website at www.staffordparks.com or by calling 540-658-5116. Otherwise, I'll see you in the hot dog line. And just one last note, because there are so many free events for you to go and see fireworks, I encourage you not to go out and buy fireworks. We are a very rural community, so those fireworks that you set off in your neighborhood upset the animals, both domesticated and farm animals. And please remember, we have a great number of veterans in our community, and you setting off fireworks in your neighborhood causes them to have stress and anxiety. So there are plenty of events throughout our area at Quantico, in the city, at Pratt Park, elsewhere, for you to go and see fireworks. You don't need to do it in your home neighborhood. Gather your friends and family, head to Pratt Park, and enjoy it with everyone. And then maybe spend the money that you would spend on those fireworks at Tilly's for ice cream or at some local restaurant so that you can enjoy the 4th of July. So that should do it for Stafford Connect for this episode. On our next episode, we'll sit down with State Senator Tara Durant and State Delegate Josh Cole and talk about the recently approved state budget and the laws that take effect in July. Until that time, I'm Tom Cohen, and you're listening to Stafford Connect Podcast. Stafford Connect is a River's Edge Media original podcast. You can listen to the show anywhere you get your podcast or catch the video on our YouTube channel. Stafford Connect, the conversation begins here.